we are doing a YouTube live. So this is how the, let me show you the, yeah. So if you want to be around the screen, the projector screen, that would center it. Yeah.
Maybe if I stand.
Sure. It's good. Yeah. 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 Until the whole projector range is good. Yeah. I can zoom it a little bit, but then your full profile won't
No,
be.
no, that's fine. That's
Okay. So about this, this will be from 2023 and second line. Yeah, second line.
And that one.
Podium?
Podium will not be there.
If you want, I can zoom out and then podium will be there.
No, that's fine. Podium is not needed.
Okay.
Because anyway, there's no laptop there.
Okay.
I'll be walking around.
Okay.
Yeah, this is fine.
This is fine, right? Yeah. Keep this and yeah.
If you comment, if AG comes, we are on.
Hey. Just give me a second.
Okay, hi.
Hello.
Yeah, I saw that.
Welcome back, everybody. Please take your seats. We also have some notepads and stationery here, pen if you want to make notes and also ask questions at the end. That will be useful. Please take your seats. And I also have a request from the first session. Folks were complaining that some people in their back rows were feeling distracted. So let's avoid that in the sessions going forward. Thank you very much. We'll start with a very hot topic. Please take your seat. Yeah, we'll start with a very hot topic in the tech industry now, generative AI. For this, we have a very special speaker, Mr. Raghu Banda. Mr. Raghu Banda is a Senior Director of AI Product Strategy at SAP Labs, where he is responsible for infusing AI technologies in SAP Cloud ERP products. He began his career as a software developer and architect in India before moving to the US in 1997. He joined with SAP in 2001 and worked in various roles such as engineering development, customer support and implementations, product marketing, product management. He has worked with predictive analytics and machine learning since SAP entered this arena in 2013. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science and Engineering and a Management Leadership program from the prestigious INSEAD Business School. He is the lead product manager for leveraging machine learning and AI into the cloud ERP products and focuses his efforts on how enterprises can benefit from it. During the COVID pandemic times, he co-authored a book for SAP on how to implement machine learning with SAP. He also runs a bi-weekly podcast, Extra AI, on the topic of extracting raw AI conversations with guests across the spectrum on how AI can be infused into business. He is now authoring another book outside of SAP on the topic of social equity and AI, scheduled for an April 2024 release. With that, please give a big hand to welcome Mr. Raghu Bandhu on the stage.
Thank you, Ranjit. Thank you all for being here. First, I would like to thank Mr. Ashwin. He was the one who has introduced me here. And thanks, Nagesh, for giving me the opportunity to talk and share or impart my experiences, I would say. I know many of you are more experienced than me. You might have a lot more thoughts. I'll try to keep the hype and let's try to see how much we can journey to this height. Like Ranjit just mentioned, yes, I've been with SAP for a long time. The experiences here I share, though they resonate with SAP, I'm trying to make it as generic as possible, because when we talk about AI and ML, it's obviously we can attribute to a lot of our personal experiences or enterprise-related experiences. Can we go to the next slide, please? So in the next 45 minutes, I'll try to go through the agenda that I have here. I know many of us know what is AI, but I would want to give a different kind of a definition here. I know people have different definitions. I'll start with that. Then we go into briefly about the supervised machine learning. I want to give the introduction before I get into generative AI. And I would like to, before going to generative AI, I would like to want to talk about what are the different problems that can be solved with AI. And then, of course, we'll go into the hot topic of generative AI. And then we'll briefly talk about the different opportunities, the hype and the challenges that we are facing. And I'll go with an example of the prompt patterns in Gen AI. And I'll end the session with providing some getting started material. And like as always, you can always reach out to me. I'll be providing my other details as well. So before I get started, I would like to ask you all a question. How many of you guys are interested in listening to audio content, whether it is YouTube videos or YouTube audio or podcasts and all? It's great. The reason why I ask this question is, I know the world is changing very fast. In the past, like, I wouldn't even go back 10, 20 years, even 5 to 7 years back. We all had the habit of writing notes and going through a lot of digital information. But now there is a lot of digital overload, and we all go through this. It is always tough to catch up to what is happening, and with all this gadgets around, we have a lot of content around. So this is where the audio series or the audio related aspects kind of keep us updated. And now with the advent of AI, we could definitely get or analyze a lot of this information. We can get a lot of these insights. So let's go to the next slide, please. So let's start. What is AI? The reason I asked a question about the podcast and the audio content, right? I'm a fan of listening to podcasts. I don't know how many of you have listened to R.P. Sridham's podcast. That is one of the Good Times podcasts. These guys have interviewed the creator of Gmail, and he gave a very nice definition of AI. it really struck me. He explained about what is manual AI. We all come through the aspects of programming. When we talk about programming, it starts with if then else kind of a statement. So that is where he talks about how we have embedded AI into the programming languages. It starts with manual AI. So that's where things have started, right? And then we all know about AI is not new. We have been into this field for the last 30 to 40 years, starting with expert systems and other things in mid-80s, and then later on, when we talk about manual AI and all these if then else statements and other things, that is how we started building intelligence into the applications that we are building, that we are creating. So that's how it all started. So let's go to the next slide, please. So like I said, AI is already transforming our lives and our businesses as well. So there are two aspects to this, right? The consumer businesses, the consumer applications is on one end, whereas the enterprise applications, I would tell them a little more additional complexity on top of that. Can you go to the next slide, please? So here, I would like to first differentiate between the everyday AI and enterprise AI. This is where I was talking about on the left, on your left-hand side, if you see everyday AI, which is more like a consumer applications, right? So you will see, we all have smartphones, most of us, and we using the face recognition. And then we also have, many of us, like when we look into any of the streaming video options, whether it is Netflix or Amazon, we see that there's a lot of things happening here, right? This is the everyday AI. Now we don't even realize that we are using AI, but it is already inbuilt. Now take that one notch up, and you see about enterprise AI. Pick up a system where we have a lot of different customer issues that might arise when we are interacting with the system. You might have a system where you have a lot of issues and we interact with the system, and this is where you can automatically sort the system. So when I talk about enterprise AI, it's not only that you're interacting with your system, with your customer system, but you also need to interact with your customer's customer. So this is where the complexity goes one level above, one level deeper. On the consumer side, you are dealing with only your consumer problems, but on the enterprise side, you have to deal with your consumer and your consumer's consumer problem too. This is where the enterprise AI becomes very, very important. And let us go to the next slide, and then, of course, there is this Gartner report which was released in April, which talks about what is the percentage of organizations that are already piloting or using AI and now generating AI related applications, and what is the overall percentage of companies investing in this. So you see, there is a huge investment going on. Let us go to the next slide, please. So now, taking that further, the definition of AI, we started with manual AI. We talked about everyday AI, enterprise AI. But when we get to here, what the basic definition of AI, typical computer technology that is designed to mimic any kind of human behavior. So this is where we are trying to mimic human behavior using algorithms, and how you can make sure that your systems are acting based on what you are defining or what you are designing. So this is where you might see you have different kinds of inputs, and then you create a model, and then that is how you have. Like you include the systems like the learning that goes into it, the problem solving, the decision making, and all these kind of things. And then you kind of build into your algorithms and you use a lot of data. So that's the basic, it's a technical definition of what we call about AI. Let's go to the next slide, please. Now I would want to take it one step further, right? Like we are talking about, again, the technical definition of business AI. This is where enterprises might want to take a bit about and understand how are we using these diverse AI capabilities and how are we infusing AI, starting with maybe pattern recognition, understanding the different patterns that are there. Mere analytics. Analytics itself, you can take a lot of these insights that are available and how do you make sense out of these insights. Then a lot of self-learning systems which are embedded into your systems. Then obviously intelligent robots and autonomous systems. And finally, natural human-machine interactions. So these are all needed when we talk about your business AI. And when we talk about business AI, it's always kind of fueled by your data and knowledge. Here, one thing I would like to bring, there are three different, there are the pillars of, when we talk about AI, we talk about people, processes, technologies, with the underlying factor of data. So when I talk about people, obviously you'll have to create awareness for your people about how to, what you're trying to do, and how do you create this awareness? By educating them about the different things that we have. Then the processes, this is where, when I was talking about the systems, enterprise systems or consumer-oriented systems, how do you take these processes and how do you embed intelligence into that? And the third thing is technology, and how do you make all this happen with the technology? So these are the three pillars when we talk about AI: people, processes, technologies, with the underlying aspects of data. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, now can you go to just, yeah, no, let's go, can you go back one slide? So here, yeah, just leave it here. So this is a slide. I've used an example of a ChatGPT prompt. We'll go into that a little later. I think if you hit on the, yeah, just leave it that way. Yeah. So here, yeah, just hit it on only once. I think, okay, that's fine. I think it generally works in the, I'll share the slides and then you will see. What I was trying to do there is, when I ask a question, I'm asking what is AI? It explains about what is AI, and it explains about machine learning. Then I ask the next question about what is generative AI, and it kind of gives a metaphor about and talks about what is generative AI with a metaphor. So I can explain what it was trying to do there. So we are interacting here with a huge model. I'll go into the aspects of large language model a bit later, but here what we are trying to do, we are interacting with the system, we are putting forward a question, and once we are putting forward the question, we are getting a response. And this is going through a humongous amount of data that is already embedded into it, and with the inference engine, it provides you the information. So when you run this, I think you will get it later. I think that's fine. So now, having talked about what is AI and the everyday AI and the enterprise AI related aspects, let's now briefly touch base into what is supervised machine learning. So let's go to the next slide. So I would want to briefly touch touch base on the aspects of, before going into the generative AI aspects, I want to briefly touch base on the aspects of supervised machine learning. So what is happening here in the aspect of supervised machine learning? In machine learning, we use different statistical and mathematical approaches to give computers and how to learn from the data. This is what we are doing. Let's skip the next one, I think. Yeah. One more. And one more. Yeah. Yeah. So we can leave it here. Yeah. So what is happening here? Supervised machine learning, as you can see here, we are using labeled data and create in a model, and then the system is learning. This is similar to a student. A teacher is explaining a student, providing problems. You are provided with a set of questions and then answers. So this is all called, we are labeling all the information and giving it to the student. The student is understanding all this information. Now, a new set of problem is given, he will understand, he or she will understand based out of the information that is provided, and then you get the results. So this is how a student is learning. In the same way, when we talk about supervised machine learning, we are always providing some kind of a labeled data, providing questions and answers, and then you give your input data, you give your output data, and you are labeling all this data. So this is where the system will learn over a period of time. This is the basic definition of supervised machine learning. Let's go to the next slide. I have a bit more explanation about the different approaches that we use. Well, one more slide. Yeah. Let's stop here. So, typical examples for supervised machine learning can be across classification or regression kind of use cases. When I say classification or regression, we are mainly talking about how do I do maybe image similarity search or document classification. I have a lot of documents. I can take some examples later on. I have a lot of documents. I want to classify all these documents. This is where we use the regression techniques or the classification techniques, depending on how we can do the supervised machine learning. And then there are some examples, like when I was talking about emails, right? Email classification, right? Nowadays we all know that we get a lot of emails, but many of these emails are already grouped or categorized, and we could also create our own labels. So this is where we are doing all supervised machine learning here. Can you go to the next slide, please? Now going to the unsupervised machine learning. Can you go to one more click? Actually, two more clicks. One more click. So when I talk about unsupervised machine learning, here we do not provide the labeled data, but it's more of providing inputs and outputs, and then the machine learns over a period of time. Here, typical examples would be clustering techniques, dimensional reduction, which is where you have doing some kind of market segmentation or prediction of the population growth, some of these examples. I'll quickly run through these slides because I want to get into that, the bigger topic. Can you go to the next? Yeah. And the third approach of machine learning is reinforcement learning. This is where we go into the topic of generative AI, and we talk about reinforcement learning here. Here, it's mainly about trial and error kind of a thing. You do some kind of a task, and you reward the system if things are good, and you do not reward the system if some things are not going well. So this is the reinforcement learning. So let's go to the next slide here. I would want to give a big picture overview about what are the different types of machine learning and how these different types of machine learning are and what is happening here, right? As I've explained, supervised machine learning, the data provided is always labeled data without output value specified. Whereas in unsupervised machine learning, we do not have, the data provided is always unlabeled data, the outputs are not specified, machine makes its own prediction. In the reinforcement learning, the machine learns from the environment using reward and awards. That's the main thing about data. Typical examples here we talk about, when we talk about supervised machine learning, it's regression or classification problems. When we talk about unsupervised learning, it's about association or clustering problems, associating different products. And then when we talk about reinforcement learning, mainly to solve reward-based problems. The thing is here, in supervised machine learning, we talk about labeled data. Unsupervised machine learning, we talk about unlabeled data. Whereas in reinforcement learning, no predefined data is used. We have external supervision when we talk about supervised machine learning. Unsupervised machine learning, no supervision, and reinforcement, no supervision. So here, again, we are solving the problems in the supervised machine learning by mapping your labeled input to the known output. Whereas here in the unsupervised machine learning, we are solving the problems by understanding the patterns and discovering the output. Whereas in the reinforcement machine learning, it follows the trial and error problem, a trial and error approach. So I'm just running through this because I want to get into the actual aspects of generative AI. Can you go to the next slide, please? And this is an example of using the regression and classification. If you go here, you see the real world example and what is the real world output. So this is how we are trying to understand, like the real world example is, I have 6,000 square feet home, 4 bedrooms, previously sold for 235K in 2005. The real world prediction, the house predicted, the predicted house price is 340K, that is the output. But how are we doing that? We are running it through these models. You take the model and then you run it through the model, and then we have provided all this data. So these are some of the examples of how do you do the house price prediction using regression. In the same way, you have some other example here about you provide a statement that the steak was terrible, the salad was rotten, and the soup tasted like salt. So this is again, you go through this model, you understand, and it's a positive or a negative sentiment. So these are some of the examples of the regression and classification algorithms and how they are used. Let's go to the next slide, please. Again, yeah, we can jump this slide. I think these are some additional examples. So now comes to the point, like, what problems are best solved by AI, right? Like we have been talking about AI, we talked about everyday AI, enterprise AI, we talked about the different approaches, machine learning approaches, starting with supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and also the reinforcement learning. But is AI needed all the time? For typical problems like mathematical calculations or typical rule-based problems, you may not need to use AI. You can use a formula and do. But there are some problems like which are best solved with AI. Let's go to the next slide. This is one of the examples, right? Like you want to translate text from French to English, or you want to write a program to distinguish a dog from a cat. You give an image as an input. So these are some of the things. And so this is where we kind of get in and understand like how to use AI and where to use AI and what are the different things that we have to get in. So you have to always find the pattern, you have to always find the use cases. Currently, I know there are customers who might, I deal with our enterprise customers on a regular basis, right? Like many times we get questions, hey, there is a lot of new technologies coming out there, AI, generative AI, I want to use AI. No, it's not that, right? What is the problem you're trying to solve? In the problem that you're trying to solve, do you need to use AI or do you need to use, can you help solve it using the normal formula-based approaches? So that is where we have to get and understand how we go from there. Let's go to the next slide, please. So now let's come to the aspect of generative AI. So we talked about different machine learning approaches. We talked about what is AI, and we also talked about what are the problems that are best solved with AI. Now, coming to the aspect of generative AI, we take this further one notch above, one notch up. Let's go to the next slide. So what is happening here, right? Like regular, typical machine learning, you read a narrow, specific set of data to discover and build a model of how humans can solve one particular problem. Whereas in the aspect of generative AI, like our ChatGPT, which we will talk about in a little while, here we are talking about massive amount of text and building of how humans can talk using the natural language. So this is where we are doing. What is this good for? With the regular machine learning, it can be about specific problem, whereas with generative AI, responding to text prompts or kind of a voice or image-based answers. Currently, we are focused more on text-based analysis, but pretty soon I think we are also working on a lot of image-based and voice-based problems. I'll also talk a bit about the upcoming things, about transactional foundational models as well, where you talk about tabular data, how you can even generate tabular data. Currently, we are focusing mainly on generative AI, which is only generating text. So those are some of the things. Typically, when we talk about machine learning, we interact with other programs like APIs. When we talk about generative AI, it is humans via chat prompts. But this can also be now go to the next level of not only humans, maybe AI with chat prompts. We'll put some thoughts into that about when we talk about the future challenges and other things. Let's go to the next slide, please. So what is happening with generative AI, right? There is a lot of ongoing disruption in the field of AI itself. We talked about classifying AI, right? Like using the regression algorithms and how do you differentiate between a dog and a cat and other things. From there, now we are going to generative AI, which is where I type in a few words and the next few words are appearing. So how is that happening? This is basically by the huge AI engine or the inference graphs that are built, which has reasoning built into it. And here we are also talking about, when we talk about generative AI, we initially talked about supervised learning. In the aspect of supervised learning, what are we doing? We are providing labeled data. We are using labeled data, take input and output. Now we are moving to self-supervised learning, which is where the system will learn from what the information that you already have. And we are moving from predefined capabilities to a lot of emerging capabilities. Finally, we are also moving from, like I've explained earlier, narrow single-purpose machine learning to broader multi-scenario AI, which is where you can link it up and work on different aspects rather than one particular aspect. Let's go to the next slide, please. So this is again one example about so what is generative AI? It is enabled by these foundation models. So what are these foundation models? Foundation models are nothing but if you have we all know 25, 30 years back in the mid-90s, we all started using internet, right? I think during those internet days, during the inception of those internet days, what happened is that I still remember those days. I think there was this, I know some of you might be aware of it. The first video which was put on the internet, like people were going crazy about it. There was this guy in Cambridge University, he created a video to watch his coffee pot being prepared. So that is how the first video that was created was put on the internet. So that is how things have started. And I still remember those days when internet was, like in the initial internet days, the first websites that was created, I still remember there was a website which a big red button. There is nothing, that page was not doing anything. You just go there, click the button, and people used to put comments. So these were the earlier days of internet. And at that time, of course, there are people, I believe some of the companies, I think the executives in some of the companies, they didn't want to invest in internet. There were people who used to restrict you from using your web browsers. Netscape, there was Netscape Navigator, Internet Explorer. People used to monitor you in your office. They didn't want you to use the browser because the idea was that you're wasting your time. But there were companies happening in the background, like Amazon and Yahoo and other things. They built huge businesses out of it. So that's how the internet boom started, right? Like in the same way, in the generative AI boom, when we talk about foundational models, there's nothing but you take all this data that is available on the internet, take all this data, create an AI engine or a foundation model, that's what it's called when we talk about the example of ChatGPT, and you create a reasoning, you create a graph. When I talk about a graph, you are creating a reasoning, a decision tree kind of a thing with a reasoning aspects of it and saying that, hey, if this happens, do this. If this happens, do that. Again, going back to your manual AI aspects. So those things are inbuilt into it, but what you are doing, rather than creating, the program is creating each and everything, you created these manual statements and created a graph engine, created a decision tree, and you put all these thoughts into that, and now you created this huge language model. And based on that language model, what is the task? Learn to predict the next word on hundreds of GB of data. What is it taking? The Wikipedia, the web text, books, etc. Again, this is an example. I think some of the slides, I think you have to bear with me. I've been with SAP for more than 20 years. I try to take away all these aspects, but still there will be some slides. But anyway, so the aspect is that you are taking the huge amount of data. Generative AI, what it is doing, take a particular user-provided prompt and generate the novel content using the previously created content. So what are you trying to do? This is a fake thing, but you can still do it. So that is how currently the things are happening, right? I think this is where you talk about hallucinations. If you give this kind of an input, obviously you'll get this kind of an output. So this is the aspect of how hallucinations can happen. I also wanted to show that aspect before we go into the further details. Just make a quick time check. I want to wrap up in another 5-10 minutes and then open up for questions. Let's go to the next slide, please. Again, this slide, I did not update this slide intentionally because you see this. The reason, the rate at which, how the things are growing so fast. This is GPT-3. Again, now currently we have GPT-4 already, and GPT-5 is already, you don't know what other things are going to be happening with GPT-5, right? So the reason why I wanted to give this example is that when you compare GPT-3, of course, maybe we'll take GPT-4, which is above 1.5 trillion parameters. You compare with, there are a lot of players here. And we cannot forget the aspect of the players from Asia, like China and other places. They have humongous amount of data and they are training on a lot of information there. So the space is huge. I think I know some of you are from Google and NVIDIA here and you know about it. I don't need to talk about it, but this is where we are going, right? Let's go to the next slide, please. So, at a big picture, what is happening here? The foundation models, how are they radically changing? The way how AI is applied. You take a foundation model, you have your data. Currently, we are mainly focused on text, right? I think we have different kinds of aspects. You can go to Bard AI, ChatGPT, or Cloud from Anthropic. Again, we all know about the drama that happened around OpenAI a couple of weeks back. I think earlier as well, there are people who came out of OpenAI and they started Anthropic, which is again focused on building responsible AI. So we will talk about the aspects of responsible AI, ethical AI. But what I mean to say is that we have a lot of players already working on the text analysis, text generation. We already have and we already can see images about advancements about image and speech as well. I have created a podcast a few months back mimicking a conversation between ChatGPT and Bard AI, again mimicking the voices of Elon Musk and Joe Rogan. So that is, it's as simple, the technology is already out there. You can very easily go and do that. The reason I created is that to tell to my audience and tell to the community that it is so easy to build all this. You should be very wary of it and how you use it, how you use these technologies. And now, I think the Midjourney CEO, I think he was already talking about the aspects of fake video. These things are going to be available by the end of this year or maybe mid of next year. The thing is that you cannot even differentiate between a regular video and a fake video. We already know about these fake images that are already available out there. So this is where things are happening, whether it is text, image, or speech. Structured data is a bit more complicated than all this. This is where you will see enterprise companies like Salesforce or SAP, Oracle, they are investing a lot in structured data. How you can generate information taking out of this structured data. You have tabular data, right? You do a transaction, you query and do a transaction. How do you generate another row in a table or another column in a table? So this is where things are happening here. Currently, the generation happens based out of the text generation, not based out of the cell automatic things of the row or columns. But the reason why I brought up this one is that once this happens, you could, the way you could use the applications will be completely different, because now you could also just like how you have a ChatGPT for your regular consumer applications, now once you can do with this structured data, with the tabular data, you could create a lot of these ChatGPT kind of applications for your enterprise applications. And that's going to be interesting and mind-blowing. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be out there in the next couple of years. And what are the typical examples that we have here? These are all examples based out of your text data, right? Like summarization, writing assistant, question answering, or code generation, and other things. I think Ranjit told during the introduction that I've authored a book for SAP, right? Like this was during the COVID days and pre-ChatGPT days, there was not much help at that time. Now, this is where I would like to bring, I think in the next slides when I talk about. Currently, in the next book that I am writing, of course I am using a lot of help from these different tools out there. How can we really take the support of these AI tools out there, define us? We shouldn't stay away from using these different tools and saying that, hey, why should I use this tool? I want to make it as authentic as possible. Yes, you can still make it authentic, but use the tools and provide it. So the reason why I'm giving all this explanation is that when I talk about summarization, now, or a writing assistant, generally, now, it's quite a common thing at our workplace or many other places. I think when you want to create a quick summary of anything, you can definitely use these tools. that is what I want to briefly bring up there. Let's go to the next slide, please. I know we are running short on time. So what are the opportunities, hype and challenges? Let's get into some of these things. Let's go to the next slide. So what are the opportunities here? Right? We can starting with creative assistance and augmentation. Whether it is graphic design, music production, or writing, or enhancing human creativity. Personalization and user experience. Then research. Then educational tools. Or whether it is revolutionizing the transportation or environmental production. So there are a lot of things happening here. I'll take a quick example here, right? Like we all know when we want to hire people, we have to create a job boarding, a job posting, and we have to put some effort in creating the text for that. We all know, we all have basic key elements that we need. Like, okay, this is a position for a documentation writer, or this is a position for creating this database administrator and all. But to create this, you need some kind of a job posting or the summary or the description and all. So for these kind of things, there are already the human resources, there are quite a lot of tools that you could use. And I believe companies like Workday and SAP and Salesforce, they're already using this. They're already using the ChatGPT kind of functionality where you just feed in the key elements and then your description is created and then you can generate the description and create the job descriptions out of that for your HR applications. So these are some of the examples. And supply chain and logistics or transportation management. Another big use case here in transportation management is that when you generate your transportation, when you are doing goods receipt and invoices and all, there is a lot of paperwork needed. So all these can be easily augmented using the generative AI technologies here. So these are some of the new opportunities that are in generative AI. Let's go to the next slide. So we are talking about the hype in generative AI, right? Like obviously media and public perception is that often we will inflate the capabilities of Gen AI. We create unrealistic expectations. Yes, that is there. That will happen in the initial phase. Then there will be some misconceptions in creativity. There will be a common misconception that generative AI can replace human creativity. Maybe yes in the long run, but currently not yet. And overestimation of AI making decision-making capabilities. So this is where things are still going to happen, but the current hype is that this is all happening. But where are we? We are here in the peak. I don't know whether it will go to the trough of disillusionment, but at some point of time we come to the normal plateau of productivity. This is where currently we have everybody jumping into it. So that's what is happening. Let's go to the next slide and talk about the challenges quickly. So there are a lot of challenges here, right? Like there are a lot of ethical and moral questions. We can start with the aspect of authorship in copyrights, right? So there is this aspect of now saying that, hey, we have ChatGPT, we have Bard. How do you differentiate between a proper, how can you save your copyright or other things, right? Like this is where the questions will come. Obviously, if I have done a podcast again on this, very detailed podcast, talking about the different phases in copyright and for authors, right? Like we start with ideas, expressions, and outcomes. These are the three phases I would say. Ideas, nobody can copyright. Everybody has ideas. You can take that idea, you can feed it. Earlier, what we had to do, we had an idea, I had to write down my idea, I had to fine tune the idea, and it takes a little while to create an expression and then to create an outcome out of that. Now we have a lot of these AI tools. You can pick up an idea, and based on this idea, you can key in this idea in any of these AI tools, and you will come up with an expression. In that expression, you can fine-tune what you get out of these AI tools and create a niche for your expression. So this is where when you go, you will see that the expressions will be copyrighted, but not the ideas. Now the outcome again, there might be different books or a similar book or a similar articles, but those cannot be again copyrighted. So what I need to say here is that using the AI assisted tools, you can obviously create expressions at a faster pace, and expressions are the ones which you will be in a stage to copyright these expressions. So that is where I think the world might be going. Obviously, there are other challenges. We have bias and fairness. How is the training data based out of the AI outputs? What are the technical limitations? What are the societal implications? How there is common fear that how are the jobs going to change? Obviously, when we had the Industrial Revolution, we had people before the invention of automobile. People were having this horse-ridden carriages and other things. Obviously, people did not lose jobs, but the industry has changed. Of course, people had to transition from one particular job to another particular job, which means that there will be a lot of training that is needed in the market. And obviously, there will be a digital divide, but this is where you will have to see how you can create the much needed awareness and understand and grow with the market. I already talked about the deep fakes and the misinformation. I have one podcast which I've done and another podcast coming on this misinformation thing. Let's continue to the next slide. So looking ahead, I think another couple of minutes I'll wrap this up. Looking ahead, what are the future challenges? How do I adapt the AI literacy? How do I adapt to, so basically how do I build into the built-in business AI, or how do I adapt the innovation? How do I easily scale and extend the capabilities of the business applications? And how do I build trust across the organization? So this is where things are happening, right? This is how we are going. I think let's go to the next slide. And I just wanted to pick prompt pattern example. Go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is briefly, if you see, this is where you have a picture which is showing a Chihuahua dog and also a muffin. So this is how you're feeding the information for a narrow AI. And here also you see a wrinkly dog and then some towels. And here you see a kind of a cow behind a pillar. So it gives an information. So it gives an illusion that the cow is a long cow. But this is the reason why I have given this example is that using the prompts, now you can realistically understand what is happening when you feed this into the prompts, using the prompts into the large language models. Can you quickly jump to the next 2-3 slides? We can jump this. Yeah. So yeah, we can jump this. I think I'll go to the. So I'll leave this one now. You can. So I'll leave this example. You can look into this example again. This is a example. Let's go to the next slide. I quickly want to explain. I was talking about prompts. Why is it important to talk about the prompts? Because this will, using the generative AI technologies that we have, how do you interact with your large language model? This is where you could structure your prompts, starting with what is the role, who it is, and how do you want to behave. And you can provide step-by-step instructions, how to approach the problem at hand, define the process. Third step is like, what is the methodology, how do you give the direction, are there any constraints, provide a personalization, and finally emotion. The reason why I'm explaining this is, there is now a lot of thinking going on into this, a lot of investment going on into this structured prompts. This is how you interact with your large language models, which is the generative AI capabilities that we are providing out of that. So these are the different steps that are involved here. Let's go to the next slide, I think. Yeah, I think we can quickly run through this. This is an example about a structured generative finance assistant. You are using all these different structured prompt, the various steps in a structured prompt. You are providing to the system, this is what I want. And now if you go to the next step, next slide, go to the next slide please. So here, now you can say that I want to, ChatGPT, I want to perform an analysis about my company's income statement. So you can go step by step, you have provided all the details and it will provide you the results. So what I mean to say is that you can create your own chat assistant to interact so that it can help you answer a lot of these problems. Let's go to the next slide. I think I want to go to the last slide. Future apps and thoughts. Yeah, we can stay here. Happening. There are a lot of generative assistants that are in the planning. Many of these corporate companies or the startups out there, they're working on creating all these generative assistants. Interactions used to be human to human. Now they are going to human to AI and AI to human. AI to AI will be the AGI or ASI that we call about. I briefly talked about text foundation models and how they are transitioning to tabular foundation models. We are kind of in this phase of human becoming an AI and eventually AI becoming a human. I think these are some of the things, thoughts in upcoming apps, other things. So briefly, I know I've jumped through some of the slides in the interest of time, but maybe I think we can open up for questions. I know we are definitely over time, but we can open up for some questions. Sure.
You have a lot of knowledge about the AI, but we are common people. I'm a doctor. I don't know much about the AI. All I know is you have to guide us which AI is going to be successful. It is a very difficult question to everybody. And where I should invest in which AI?
That's exactly funny.
Repeat the question.
Yeah, so the question is, there are a lot of these AI tools out there, which AI tool I need to use to become successful, to make money, and over here, of course, everybody. So that's a great question. If I know the answer for that, I wouldn't be standing here. But let me tell you one thing. The thing is, there are AI tools. We all know that there are quite a lot of these AI tools, whether it is the OpenAI, ChatGPT, Google has invested a lot, but Amazon is investing a lot. NVIDIA is much deeper, right? They are into the chips. They are preparing the chips. On top of that, we have all these hyperscaler platforms, Google's and everything. So Microsoft has. So the question is, when the internet boom has happened and when the cloud boom has happened, we know that there are a lot of these players. There will be a couple of unicorns which will come out. Amazon came out. In the same way, Google came out. Right? Before that, we had companies like SAP, Microsoft, and all. Of course, these companies, IBM, and all, right? Like, these companies are going to exist, but you will always, and these companies are also investing a lot. So obviously, there will be a slow growth in these companies, but you will definitely see a few new players like OpenAI. And then there will be Anthropic, there is another who are investing big time. Cohere.
4 billion Amazon invested in Anthropic.
Yes. Yeah, Anthropic. And then Cohere is another one. Alpha. There are a lot of these. That is all now creating the language models, which I have explained, right? So you have your chips at the bottom, then you have the hyperscaler platform, which means all these Googles and Amazons and Microsofts, they are creating all the platform and structure for you. On top of that, you have the language models, which is creating this AI brain and pudding it. On top of that, you will have all these enterprise players, enterprise applications, whether it is Salesforce or other application companies who are building on top of that. So end of the day, what is happening is that in each of these layers, you have different players. And you will have to make a call and you have to invest wisely in all of these. Not all of these, when I say, you need to make a wise decision and invest in some of these or maybe in the ETF funds where they kind of invest in all of these, in some of these big firms.
Some of these IT work are
Yeah.
Where did you invest your
Yeah, we can talk in the coffee time.
He answered that question already. If he did it right, he wouldn't be sitting here.
Yes, that's what we listed. I know I had to rush through some of these slides, but like Nagesh was mentioning, we can have a lot of conversations.
So, we have lunch after this. We don't want to stand between you and your lunch. So we will have just 2 more questions. So whoever wants to ask the next question, please come.
Thank you so much. I'm in the pharmaceutical industry. Biology has become much more complex than it was before. We thought we could solve everything because of the biology we know. But now it's become so complex that even AI is not enough. When do you think we'll reach the stage when AI will replace the doctor?
So, I'm a big fan of doctors. I have my dad's own sister is a doctor, my aunt. My dad used to say that, hey, so I have great appreciation for the medicine, the medical profession. I still tell one of my daughters to become a doctor. Having said that, yes, there will be, you have different levels of in the doctor field, right, the medical field. Maybe the nurse practitioners, We'll start with, just like in the IT field, here now we have documentation writers, whether or testing people or programming used to be a key field earlier, but now it is kind of moving from a programming field. Rather than sitting and programming, you have to understand how to use the tools, different tools. In the same way, we'll start with nurse practitioners and maybe physicians. One thing I want to make is that in 80s and 90s, we all heard about flying cars or robots taking over. That did not happen yet because the marriage between robotics, hardware and software has not yet happened. Once that happens, many of our jobs will be at stake. That is where, maybe if you read this book of Michio Kaku, Dr. Michio Kaku, an astrophysicist, The Physics of the Future, he talks that maybe by 2070 or 2080, we'll get to that phase where, I think Elon Musk is already talking about that, and Sam Altman is already talking about the universal basic income, right? But I would say, maybe not in my lifetime or our lifetime, but when the perfect marriage between hardware and software happens, many of these jobs will be replaced. But again, our human mind is never stable, right? We keep thinking. So we can always make better things out of what you have. I hope I answered it.
We'll tell you one on one.
Charging.
Consulting fee, there is a consulting fee.
So, I don't know whether you have got this movie, but it's a lot of this AI outcome is inputs of many other people's data. Now we are just enjoying the time, but the person who invented the input data, they are not getting wise. So how are we going to handle it? Even ChatGPT was started as a non-profit organization, and now they went to profit. They are tied with Microsoft and all this and so on. Whoever invested the information into that, they are not going to get anything. So this is going to happen forever. So how are we getting the copyright information back?
See, this is, I briefly touch based on this, about the copyright thing, right? Again, I'll go back, again, there was one other interesting podcast I listened into about this copyright thing. Ideas, expressions, outcomes. Ideas, you can never copyright. Everybody has ideas. So the information that is on the internet, again, validating that information, how much of that information is true, anybody can go and put any information out there. That is what is happening. That is the reason now there are startups coming up where I have done one podcast on consensus. It is similar to Google. I think what these guys they do, I think Google also has that, right? Like the Google Scholar, Google has both sides. One end is creating the Google search, pulling all the information, providing the results. Maybe some of that information is not true. They validate much of the information and give the validated results on the top. But then you can also, on the other extreme, you have the Google Scholar, where you go through this Google Scholar and get only that information which is really validated. So that is where your answer lies, right? I think there will be a lot of information out there, and now with all these deep fakes going on, you cannot even differentiate between what is real, what is fake. But of course, there will be startups working on identifying what is real and what is fake. So there are already things going on there.
What's your perspective on the pace at which AI is moving, moral scientific, and based on your answer, the second part of the question is we need a governance.
See, the thing is, this is a great question, right? People have different opinions. If you see the Sam Altmans and Mark Andersons of the world, they want to go at breakneck speed. Whether you agree to that or not, if you want to, some countries, maybe the democratic countries might go ahead and create the framework and restrict the pace, but that doesn't happen across the globe. You might have other countries like Russia and China, they might say, I don't care, I want to build. So, this is where innovation and regulation, there is one beautiful podcast you guys should listen to. I don't know how many of you listen to all in podcast by Chamat Paligata here and a few of others, the besties. They talk about this, about innovation and regulation. So that is a debate will take. You will obviously, you cannot restrict innovation with all this, but at the same time, you will have some kind of a framework which the governments. So this is where I think I didn't put one slide which talked because it was a little more SAT oriented. The governments have to work obviously with the corporates and also the communities, right? I think it will happen in different forms, wherein we have a constitution, US constitution. In the same way, every country has some kind of a constitution. Maybe, depending on the country, the AI that you create will be a little different.
Thank you, Raghu. I myself have worked on ML and AI and recently Gen AI for over half a decade with my work at Google. And yet, this is one of the most comprehensive sessions I have seen, which covers from conventional ML to reinforcement learning to Gen AI and also the applicability where you can apply and where you cannot apply. So thank you, Mr. Raghu, for presenting a great information. And it was also so much information was covered. I have a feeling that we probably can spend the whole day on just this topic. And I must also thank Nagesh Kadmuri for bringing Mr. Raghu Balla to this session here. As a token of appreciation, we want to honor Mr. Raghu Bandhu. I will invite upon NRIVA President and all the board members, Srinivas Rapandiri Garu, Ramesh Bapanapalli Garu, Raja Pampati Garu, Ellen Rao Garu, Dr. Venu Garu, and Praveen Tagatmani Garu.
I kindly request Dr. Venu Garu as well as Dr. Makam Garu, Raja Pampati Garu, Ellen Rao Garu, and all the board members to be here. Raghu Garu, I want to tell you two things, Andy. Now I understood that AI is absolute intelligence is more better than the artificial intelligence. And another request, Raghu, lot of people are waiting for they have a lot of money and they don't know where to put in Gen AI. The moment you came to know, please help all our members. Guys, we have a few more sessions lined up and Ranjit will tell us what is the next session looks like. Ranjit, can you give a small outlook of the whole program for today before they leave to the lunch? Please stay tuned for a minute.
Yeah, this was just a trailer. We have more such great sessions lined up. We will take a lunch break now and we will reconvene here back at 1 p.m. At 1 o'clock we have a special panel session with women in leadership. We have more great speakers lined up for that, and followed by one of the very interesting topic, conservative investing in crypto. Conservative and crypto are pretty opposite, but we have a special speaker explaining how you can conservatively invest in crypto. And we will end the conference with startup and VC funding panel discussion. So if you leave the conference, you have a big cost to bear. So please stay back and attend all the sessions. Thank you.
Yeah. We,
Okay, so you're directly streaming from YouTube. Huh?